Hey, listen up. सोच जरा सोच 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 आसानी क्यों ढूंढ रहा तू रोड 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 जहाँ जाएगी ना रोड ऐसे आएंगे कुछ मोड़ then you gotta pave make way खुद के लिए यो सोच जरा सोच 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 छोड़ी क्यों है ख्वाबों की वो खोज 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 छोड़ चेस अट्रैक्ट करो मैप पूरा ट्रैक करो all you gotta do is freaking go 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 सोच जरा बैठ के अब सोचते हैं सोच जरा ये कि लोगों में वो सोच नहीं है खास इनके शौक नहीं है काहेली किस बात की जब सारा कुछ यहाँ फोन पे है प्रोडक्ट सोच जिगर इधर सारे अपने जोन में है 9 to 5 ही करना बता और कोई तेरे गोल्स नहीं है कंफर्ट जोन में है बाहर आके गौर करे शुरू अपनी खोज करें कहाँ पे ना इग्नोर करे रोज लड़े जाग जाएं सोच पे ध्यान करें सोच पे ध्यान करें पता ब्रो जीत का तू जानता है पता ब्रो रजा ब्रो मेहनत में है रब की भी
Hey folks, thank you for joining our Sochology Edu series. My name is Mudassir Bungish and I'm joined by my co-host Mohammed today for this Fireside chat. We have a super special guest for you today, but before we get started, just a quick announcement. Whether you're joining us from LinkedIn or YouTube, please post your questions into the chat and we'll bring them up either during or at the end of the session. As many hosts have said over the past couple of weeks and months, Marty doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll provide one for those who still aren't familiar with him. Marty has been in the product management field for the past 4 decades, 2 of which he spent advising Fortune 500 and other top software companies on how to do true product management. He is founder and partner at Silicon Valley Product Group and has authored and co-authored numerous books on product management, including his latest book, Transformed, Moving to the Product Operating Model, which, by the way, we'll be doing a giveaway of today, so stay tuned on how to get in on that. He's also a mentor, a friend to the product community, and is affectionately known as the father of modern product management. Marty, I was reflecting before the session on how fortunate we are to have product leaders like yourself and the entire team at SVPG, including Christian, Martina, Chris, all of whom have been on Sochology, as well as other forums, and have taken out the time to provide guidance to the product community. And it really shows the selflessness that you and your team operate with in order to help the product community with your combined experience and wisdom. We're so honored that you took out the time to join us. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, our pleasure. So our topic for this session is product management in emerging markets. But before we dive into that, I want to get your sort of hot take on something. So you're obviously very close to tech companies, and tech jobs are going through a very, very tough time right now, reaching close to 500,000 layoffs in 2023 and 2024 combined. Of course, increasing interest rates and macro plays a part, but all this when companies are having record profits. And frankly, virtually none of the senior leadership at these companies have been dismissed, even though they claim they made the mistake of over forecasting. So what do you think is going on here? Is there something beneath the surface that we're not seeing? I'd love to get your take on this.
Well, I mean, this is sort of one of the advantages maybe that comes from doing this for 40 years. I lost track of how many of these ups and downs I've lived through and witnessed. It's a messy industry is messy for sure. And this is, unfortunately, we're on that side of the cycle right now. And so there are a number of companies that overhired. There's no question. I don't know that, the pandemic, if I'm honest, I'm amazed so many companies survived it. So just surviving it was hard for so many companies. And the fact that several of them overhired because they didn't know when it was really going to end, they didn't know if the dynamics would change. I mean, I don't think I could have done any better. I don't know anybody else who could have done any better. So I don't think that's, I don't think that's grounds to remove company leaders. Now, there's different grounds. I don't know if you saw, but finally, the Boeing board, the major airplane company, finally removed its CEO, who's been horrible for decades. Finally happened. People died, as you may know, because of that. That's the kind of things that I think justify. But stuff like this, and the other thing that's gone on, we basically had an era of very low cost of funds. And that era has been gone for the last year or two. And so the cost of money is more expensive for businesses, which means hiring people is more difficult. than it was. So there are other factors. And of course, generative AI is more of a question mark for so many people, and they're scared to hire when they don't know what they don't want to hire and then lay off a bunch of people because generative AI is changing the numbers that they need. So there's a lot of uncertainty right now. I saw the
Mhm.
same thing happen with the internet. I mean, a lot of your listeners are probably too young for that, but in 1995, 1996, the internet happened, and there was huge disruption and confusion, disruption. Tons of people lost their job. Lots of people got jobs because of the new technologies, but it was
Yeah.
very disruptive, especially if you were one of those people who lost their job. So we see this all the time. It doesn't make it any easier every time.
Yeah.
Still painful for so many people. Um, and there are other factors at play too. There's been, there's been a lot of people that just saw the growth in the industry and just jumped on the train and didn't worry too much about what kind of value they were really providing. And of
Mhm.
course, always dangerous because inevitably, when things start to go in the other direction, CEOs look and say, well, I don't really see the value in these people. And so they're at the top of the list to be laid off. And unfortunately, several product related roles are in that category. And so it's hit several people pretty hard.
Mhm. Yeah. How do you think, I mean, considering you went through the dot-com boom, how do you think people can kind of upskill themselves or kind of get through this tough cyclical period?
Well, what I tell everybody, and I tell them this all the time, the best time to do this preparation is when things are good, right? But
Yeah.
it's never too late. It is just never too late for you. So, my advice is to always make yourself more valuable to your company, make yourself more valuable to your team, so that hopefully people, when they're considering we have to cut costs, you're way far from the top of the list. And there's a lot of things people can do for that. One of the ones, and honestly, I love going to emerging markets around the world. I've been spending some real time in Africa lately, but I've never been to Pakistan, so I can't speak directly to that. As you know, Silicon Valley is full of Pakistanis. I mean, we have
Yes.
great tech contribution from Pakistan. So it's not like we don't, I mean, we know the people are strong. We know they can do this work. It's just, I don't know what it's like in the country personally. But in a lot of the world, they fell for this whole agile product owner trap. And if that's what the people on the call are, agile product owners, my advice is you should be worried and you should get going and start upskilling from a product owner, which is down here, to a product manager, which is up here. Make yourself more valuable. There are many things you can do yourself, no matter what company you're in. If your manager is supportive, there's even more things you can do. But even if your manager is not, there are many things you can do to raise your skill level. And I think it's time to, I mean, I'd rather get ahead of this than be caught behind, but it's, you don't want to waste a day. You want to get serious about this.
And Marty, on that note, are there any resources that you would recommend that people could possibly dab into as they upskill themselves? Any of your favorites that you've seen?
Well, lots. I mean, if you know, I've spent the last 20 years creating these resources. Most of them are free too.
Yep.
As long as you have internet access, you can get to this. So go to the svpg.com website. In fact, there's an article called Product Management Start Here, literally. And it's got because there's a lot of great stuff out there, but there's also a lot of terrible stuff out there.
Yeah.
And so what we try to do, look, who knows, maybe they want to listen to our advice, maybe not. It's up to the person. But if they want our opinion about what's good, start here. And there's tons of resources. There's books, as you know, there's 4 books now from SVPG. Yeah. So all of these things, why do we don't do them? I mean, we do them to reach people who we can't reach in person. And there's only 5 of us, so how many people really can we reach in person? It's not that many. But we do these resources to kind of spread what we've learned to anybody, no matter where they are. In fact, a lot of the world, all they really have is a cell phone and an internet access. That's it. And
Yep.
but the truth is, you can do a lot with that today. Certainly more than you ever could in the past.
Yep. And I was reading your article, the Product Management Theater, and you speak about non-product management roles and basically project management roles that have more or less don't have enough training and skill to cover basically the true product management responsibilities. So essentially, simply declaring themselves as product management is more or less pretending, right? So in your opinion, what would be the main differentiators between these, I would say pretenders maybe, or someone who's just more or less not a product manager generally and is trying to be a product manager?
Yeah.
What would be the key differentiators there?
Well, first, I want to clarify, it's not that people just declare, like they put a sign on their door that says, I'm the product manager. That's not what they're doing. Most of them have actually been through some kind of training. And often those training programs are the ones that gave them the sign to put on the door.
Mhm.
What I'm
Okay.
trying to do is call that out and say, most of the time that is BS.
Yeah.
You know, those certifications are meaningless, and they're not even teaching you the real product role. Why? Because they don't even know the real product role. How many people have been certified as an agile product owner, CSPO or a PSPO class, but the person that even taught the class has never even done product at a product company?
Yeah.
So it's just ridiculous out there. And who are you going to blame for that? I mean, everybody should take some responsibility, right? You can maybe do some more research, make sure the person you're learning from actually knows what they're talking about. So that would be good. But really, most of the time, it's the manager, the company that sent their people to this class. And they're the ones that should have done some more work to figure out what they were really training their people on. So I don't blame the individuals. But the reality is, many individuals are not trained. They've never. And the truth is, most of us that I would argue that know how to do the job well, we learned it not even from training. We learned it from our manager that had showed us over a year or two of coaching. That's how most of the best people I know learned the craft of product. Training can help, books can help, articles can help, all these things can help. But fundamentally, coaching is really where most people learn these skills, because it's not really something that's taught in university.
Yeah.
And that's true really for design and engineering roles too. There's better university training in design and engineering, but to really learn how to do it well in a product organization, they usually learn it from their managers.
And on that mentoring note, how should one strike that conversation with someone he feels could be a good mentor, or what should we look for in a good mentor?
Well, I mean, there's another article, by the way. This is such a common question. If you just Google SVPG, where to work, because this is such a common question. It's like, where should I go work? You know, do I have to go to Google, or do I have to whatever? And you don't. But it tells you the kind of research to do, mostly on LinkedIn, to make sure that you are finding a manager that really can help you. That's the first thing that we try to advocate. Is it's not really the company you join, it's the manager you're going to work for. Make sure and do some. It's all on LinkedIn. Right? Go see where that manager used to work. Go see where they learned the craft of product, and you'll have a very good indication. And then in your interview, of course, your first job is to convince them that you're a great person to hire, but your second job is to find out for yourself whether you'd like to work there. And so you're asking, like, well, all right, I'm really here because of you. Would you be willing to spend the time to help me become fantastic, excellent at the job? And you're trying to see if you two are a good match that way.
Makes sense.
Awesome. So Marty, one of the cultural challenges for product managers in emerging markets is lack of agency, right? Which is lack of one's independent capability or ability to act on one's will in the companies they work. due to rigid social hierarchies and norms. So, for example, you can't freely challenge your coworkers' thoughts, ideas, and certainly not your boss, right? Or try to explain these things to higher ups. Do you believe real product managers can emerge in such an environment? And if so, what would they need to do?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'd say is this is not about emerging markets. There are many emerging markets that do not have these cultural challenges at all. In fact, I've never seen a place with higher agency than Nigeria. And Nigeria is anybody's definition of an emerging market, right? So, several years ago, Israel was that way, but huge sense of agency. China that way, huge sense of agency, but not these cultural issues. Yet there are other countries in the world, Japan is an example, South Korea is an example, where there are these cultural challenges, like can you respectfully disagree, this kind of thing, especially with somebody who is on the higher level of a hierarchy. So it's not about emerging markets, it's about dealing with those local cultural differences. And of course, this is where coaching makes such a difference, because what you're not trying to encourage people to be jerks. You're not trying to do that at all. You're trying to encourage them to collaborate, real collaboration. And that happens, ironically, you need psychological safety to do that. You need this level of respect and trust. I've never run into that issue with a Pakistani where it's a problem. I've never run into that. It's not about that at all. And so you need to coach the people on how to work together to solve hard problems. And it does require friction, but it's the good kind of friction, not the bad kind of friction. And so that's what coaching helps so much in.
Got it. Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, go for it, Mohan.
So, in a couple of recent conversations that we've seen online, where you've basically interacted with product teams in Saudi Arabia, Brazil, and these sort of countries, one challenge in these markets is, I guess, the lack of product leadership, and simply because they just haven't had the time to develop. And maybe this is something that we've seen as well in North America and Europe, where you have strong product leadership. So what would your advice be to organizations in these regions on how to develop this product leadership quickly, so that then they can sustain and obviously grow their company, but grow their products as well as their teams?
I mean, what you're seeing, yes, you're right. There's a lot of parts of the world that don't have very advanced product leaders, but for the same exact reason, they don't have very advanced product managers. They often have engineers that are just order takers. They're not professional engineers. I mean, all these things go together, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question is, they might not have been exposed yet to this model. That's not really the question. The question is, how quickly can they learn these things? Like you said, there is a new book out, and one of the things we wanted in the book was to tell lots of case studies, but we didn't want any of them from Silicon Valley, because it's, those companies were born in this way of working. It's not very hard for them to do it, but it's very hard. Like, you mentioned Saudi Arabia. It's the first team I got to work with in Saudi Arabia, and it's like they had never done any of this stuff, but very quickly, amazing product leaders, amazing product managers, designers, engineers doing amazing things. You can read that for yourself and decide how amazing you think it is. I think it's incredibly amazing. And it just proves that the barriers are really not that high if you want to do it. And one of the advantages that, we say never waste a good crisis. The pandemic was a crisis, but it forced a lot of companies to do things that they would have been reluctant to do before because they were desperate. And one of those things was to try whole different ways of working. So when you had a leader that's like, we know we can do this, let us try, it's been amazing to see what's happened. But yes, product leadership, if you had to pick one of the competencies that's the most important, it would be that one, because they're the ones we hold accountable for strong product managers, strong designers, strong engineers. So without that strong product leader, it's difficult. Now, I will say that does not mean you need to go ship a bunch of Pakistanis from Silicon Valley back to Karachi. It doesn't mean that at all. It can. That's one thing you can do, is people can come and lead. But another you can do, which is what they did, by the way, in Saudi Arabia, is they got a coach, a product leadership coach, which in a few months shows that leader not only how to work this way, but then helps show the leader's people how to work this way. So I'm a big fan of product coaches, product leadership coaches, especially. And yeah, I don't know enough about the local product community, but I do know there are many great Pakistani product leaders in the world. And so even if they did it remotely, that would work. But if they go back home and it can do it in person, even better.
Yeah. Great. I think, Marty, you called out the gap that we have here in our region, at least, right? Is the coaching gap, and that's kind of what we're trying to enable. So, and you mentioned your new book, Transformed. So here it is, guys. So we'll be doing a draw. In order to be entered into the draw, just type Transformed into the chat for a chance to win your copy, and we'll announce a winner at the end of the session. Okay. All right. So Marty, given your decades of experience in Silicon Valley and with other companies in North America, what are some of the historical lessons that PMs in emerging markets can learn from PMs in developed markets so that they don't make the same mistakes, since a lot of tech startups have started popping up in these regions, including the ones you mentioned?
Well, I was kind of hinting at this before, but I would argue that it's definitely not about emerging markets. If you think about it this way, product is, if you had to pick what it's really about, it's about product market fit, getting to product market fit wherever you are in the market. What product market fit means, of course, is you get the right product for the right market. If you're in an emerging market, that just characterizes your market. If you're in a mature market, which, by the way, is a lot harder a lot of times because you have to displace incumbent products, then you deal with that. So the craft of product is all about getting the right product for whatever the market is. And it is one of the great things about emerging markets is there are problems to solve everywhere, just everywhere. I was my partner. You sounds like you know my partner, Christian Idiotti. He's Nigerian. He's the one who introduced me to Nigeria last year, and he was like, "You're not going to believe how many problems there are to solve, how much opportunity they realize." He also said, "You're not going to believe how ambitious people are here about solving those problems. They just need the opportunity. They just need to learn the techniques and the skills." And he was right. There are opportunities everywhere in every area of life, from literally your personal life, getting, water delivered to the home, making payments, all kinds of problems to solve there, and business life, just to be able to do business, to work the way you need to and collaborate on different ecosystems, different infrastructures. These are just huge opportunities. So this is wide open space for product people. It doesn't really get much better than emerging markets, especially because each emerging market is different in terms of, ecosystem. And so just because something worked in one country doesn't mean it's going to work in another country. In fact, that's what that company in Saudi Arabia did so well. They were in the travel industry. Travel exists everywhere in the world, right? But what they did well was they solved it for their market better than any of the American travel behemoths. And by the way, not a little bit better, a lot better. I forget the actual number, but they have something like 80% market share for travel over the big OTAs in the US. I love that. So it's not really about emerging market. It's about product. Product is about solving for whatever market you are targeting.
Yeah, that's great insight, right, Marty? I think the kind of easy approach that we sometimes mentally have is, if it's worked there, well, let me just kind of pick it up and toss it here and see if it sticks, right? Or at least we believe it'll be successful because it's been successful somewhere else, in more developed markets. So that's great insight. Thank you so much.
Honestly, I see it almost the reverse. People say it can't work here because we're not like them. And I just
Mm.
think they're just looking for an excuse not to do anything. Because the truth is you can learn a lot from any good team anywhere in the world. And there's going to be much that applies. The most important thing I think you learn from any good team in the world is that they don't do the same thing twice. They are constantly dealing with whatever the situation is. They're using their brain. They're figuring out the right techniques. They don't fall into that trap of just using a common process. There is no good process like that. They learn to think, they learn the skills, the techniques, and then they apply it however they need to apply it. And so you absolutely can learn, in my opinion, from anybody in the world that's doing things well. I continue to learn from teams that are doing things well, no matter where they are. So what I often see, though, is people just looking for that easy excuse not to do anything. They say, oh, well, we're Pakistan. We can't do it. It doesn't work that way. Or I hear this all the time, not about Pakistan, but the companies, they're like, oh, well, the government doesn't let us do this. Or, we can't give stock to people because of the way the tax regulations are. Or we don't have as much traffic, so we can't do these A/B tests. Or, they're just looking for an excuse not to do something. But any good product team will say, look, that's normal. We're going to pick the right technique that does let us do this.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So we'll take an audience question now. I know you mentioned a couple of examples in your book, but maybe you could mention an example that we're not familiar with. So can you share insights or an example of successful product transformation or turnaround that you've observed or been involved in, maybe outside of Silicon Valley?
Well, I mean, the best way I could answer that is to please read the book. There are a dozen case studies, all from outside of Silicon Valley. And by the way, from all over the world. There's a great story from Brazil. There's a great story from the UK about a rail company, old industry, rail trains. Yeah. And how they completely turned around and became literally the most successful IPO in UK history as of that date, which was a couple of years ago. And that total turnaround, beautiful examples of that. So the point is, you can find examples in hardware and, of course, software and B2B. Another classic one, a lot of people say, we can't do this because we're sales-driven enterprise software. And I was like, yeah, that's so ridiculous. Here's a great example of an extremely sales-driven, extreme enterprise software that's now one of the best in the world. And look how they did that. And that's in the book as well. So the point is, everybody always thinks they're like, can't do this stuff until you show them examples. And in fact, if I were to pick 5 right now, I could recite out of the book, somebody listening would say, oh, well, he didn't talk about my kind of company, so we can't do that. That's just how people think. So I wouldn't, if you're serious about the craft of product, I mean that if you're serious, not everybody is, read the book, read those examples. First of all, I hope that will convince you, whoever it is. But even more, it'll hopefully give you language to work with your executive team to get them to understand this.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, Marty, we've got one final question. So what is the one question you wish people would ask you more often about product management, and what is your answer to it?
Oh, I don't know. That's hard. I mean, I get every question you could possibly imagine, which I appreciate, actually, because that's where I get my inspiration for other articles and stuff. What I will tell you that what a lot of people ask me privately is, and a hard one to answer publicly, is there are a lot of voices in product that are really good. There are also a lot of voices in product that are, at least in my opinion, really bad. They are just absolutely don't know what they're talking about. And what, of course, people want is they want me to call out all the people that are speaking nonsense. But of course, my policy is if I think people are really good, I shine a light on them. I try to feature them and get other people to follow them. But if I don't, I usually don't mention them. Just don't mention them. And I like people to think enough that they can figure out the difference. But what I will say is there's some really great voices in product today. Shreyash Doshi, you may know Shreyash. His thinking is, I love everything he writes. He's been a friend for years. I love his thinking on this, on product in general, actually, the broad range of product. Teresa Torres. Teresa wrote the book, Continuous Discovery Habits. I love her thinking on product discovery. Gib Biddle. You may know Gibson. He has thoughts on a lot of things. I especially love his thinking on product strategy. There's, I mean, there are more. I could keep going, but there aren't that many more. So you have to decide who are the people that you really want to look to. All I could really say is that if you're looking for reasons not to get serious about product, it's easy to find.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we just did a draw for Marty's new book. So congratulations, Hassan Javed Waraj, Principal Product Consultant at Systems Limited. We'll get in touch with you on LinkedIn, get your address, and have that shipped out to you ASAP. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Marty, thank you so much for your time. Myself and everyone online, I'm sure, learned a ton. On behalf of our product community and the Product Soch team, thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for joining us. If you haven't already, make sure to follow the Product Soch LinkedIn page so you can be in the know on all future and in-person events and sessions. And definitely check out SVPG and Marty's books. They're a huge treasure trove of knowledge and experience that they've built up over the decades. And we're very fortunate to have access to that. So thanks again, Marty, and thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Hope it was useful.
Definitely. Thank you so much.